Hello and welcome back to Chat About It, Don't Shout About It with me, Rachel, the Queen of the Woke, as crowned by one of my haters. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to my channel. Thank you to everyone who has subscribed already. I really couldn't do this without you. I've got a new goal of 1,200 subscribers. Can I do it? Well, we'll see. Now, we are continuing on with our reviews of the first outings of the Doctor. This one may even be a slightly controversial one because I'm going to explain why I think Clara works in this episode. You'll have to wait and see for that, though, as to what I've got to say about that. So this particular one will be the last one for a little while, as I'll be switching it up and moving to last episodes from, well, not necessarily next week, but the week after. You can vote on the current poll on my community page, as you are my subscribers and you are the ones who choose what I review from Doctor Who. And for this week's episode, you chose Peter Capaldi's first outing as the Doctor, Deep Breath. Deep Breath was written by Stephen Moffat, directed by Ben Wheatley, and it aired with 9.17 million viewers. And I did double check that figure this week, and I definitely got it right, unlike last week, where I had to correct myself in the comments. Deep Breath sees our newly regenerated Doctor and a rather confused and untrusting Clara being regurgitated by a Tyrannosaurus Rex. They land in Victorian London. They run into Madame Vastra, Jenny, and Strax, who mainly really serve this story as familiar faces for the audience and for Clara, and they find themselves in the midst of strange goings on within the city. It's a bit of a who done it, which I do actually quite like in Doctor Who. Now, as usual, there will be loads of things that I miss out, so please make sure that you do actually leave your comments below. I have a little confession to make about this particular one. This viewing that I did for this particular episode is actually the second time I've watched this first outing with Peter Capaldi as the Doctor. Yes, before this, I'd only ever watched it once before. I honestly can't tell you why that's the case, but it just is. That's the way it happened. It's a good episode. It doesn't mean to say that I hated it. I really didn't, but it is good. But the best bit is because I hadn't actually seen it multiple times like I have with a lot of the other episodes, there were loads of bits that I'd actually forgotten. So it was like experiencing it for the first time all over again. And one of the things that I had forgotten about this episode was the length of this episode. I'd forgotten that it was 1 hour, 16 minutes long. That's like a relief. The series from the very start, when it rebooted in 2005, suffered from a major issue throughout, and that was the episode lengths. It was always better when there were two-parters because, well, they can be slowed down actually. The benefit of this opening for a Doctor was because the episode was at this length, it meant that you could actually slow the episode down, allow it to breathe. And when you slow it down, you're less likely to get plot holes and more likely to get a much tidier resolution, which is what happens here. Well, at least in my opinion, I think it's pretty tidy. So in this episode, the Doctor has a very dodgy regeneration. The regeneration first outings are always a place where I feel the actor playing the Doctor gets to play around with a lot of the things that he's going to be doing potentially before going down a more direct route that he wants to do. Peter Capaldi was never fully convincing in his first outing for me as the Doctor. Certainly did play it rather well. You could tell he was having fun. It was clear that he was definitely going to be quite an abrupt Doctor and less energetic, taking it perhaps back to sort of more the classic era, a bit more pensive, with a stark contrast to the energetic Max Smith. His first outing was also quite erratic as the Doctor. For example, writing all over the walls in Madame Vastra's house and stealing the horse. The only thing I really associated with him and the more eccentric side with this was the escape through the window. Now, he very much has the alien quirks as well. He very clearly brings it back to Alien. This is almost like a reset compared to what we get with Matt Smith. And Matt Smith was actually quite an alien doctor as well. The talking to the dinosaur and the horse and taking their feelings into more consideration than his human counterparts with this version of the Doctor is very much what I would consider to be an alien thing for him to do. In fact, it does actually very much clearly go back to being alien and companion in this episode. Clara is not my favorite companion, as I feel she is with a lot of people. So it's not a big surprise that I said that. And that's not because of Jenna Coleman. Clara is the overdone impossible girl over and over. However, this is one of her best episodes. This is where she really does work as a character. I often say that the companion is the eyes of the viewer, asking the questions that need asking, experiencing the universe on the behalf of the viewers, learning to accept the new doctor when the changeover happens, and her misgivings and lack of trust because of what she had seen happen to the doctor that plays throughout this entire episode is brilliant. Just think about it. Okay, you may not agree with me. This is absolutely fine because I understand not a lot of people like Clara. I'm not a big fan of her either. Sometimes the companions in Doctor Who accept the new version of the Doctor completely and very quickly. But Clara was truly scared and extremely skeptical of what had happened before her. It was like a total stranger before her. What are we all like with strangers? This was probably one of the better written episodes when it comes to a companion accepting a new doctor, especially in this case because he was a lot older and we hadn't really seen that since the John Pertwee era, and children won't be used to it. Whilst children are actually in general very very accepting. That's still a big ask. If you're an adult, take yourself back to when you had a changeover of the Doctor, be it classic or early days New Who, and try and remember how you felt. Moffat ensures to put an end to the mistrust of the Doctor when Matt Smith appears at the very end as a way of speaking to the audience. Trust this new Doctor that you have before you, Peter Capaldi. Very clever writing, and he utilized Clara to do that. And in many respects, I also feel like this is a much more grown up version of a companion than perhaps we ever got with RTD. So that's why I think Clara really works in this episode. You don't have to agree with that, but that's my opinion. So I would like to talk briefly about Strax. He's a great character, but I have a lot of issues as well. Why a butler? He should be with the Sontarans, really. I never felt it necessary to put Strax in as a butler. It turns him into a more comedic character because his old habits really don't go away. So, like saying things like melting the Doctor, funny but not really needed. He serves his purpose in this episode. He shows how well he understands the military and the Doctor by bringing the TARDIS to Madame Vastra's house. The scene with the tramp, the homeless guy, I think this is actually one of the best scenes in this episode. And I do remember when I first watched this episode, the Doctor saying, "Why did I choose this face?" Thinking, yes, they're going to make it a mystery. Now, obviously, it's a reference to the fact that Peter Capaldi was actually in the fires of Pompeii. However, I was excited, very excited that they would turn this into a whole entire mystery because they don't do that when Colin Baker resurfaces as the Doctor after playing Commander Maxwell. I was really excited. Shame that the context much later on didn't pay off. I'll address that when we get to that episode as to why I think that. I was just excited the first time and watching it back. I was so bored by that line because it is essentially redundant, knowing how that line actually gets addressed much later on in Peter Capaldi's run. And another downer I have is Jenny calling Vastra a lizard. Jenny's Vastra's wife. Surely Jenny would know that she is a Silurian, unless I have forgotten something. And by the way, the sonic screwdriver was used 4 times in this episode alone. I should really start keeping a tally. So let's talk about the main crux of the episode. The half-faced man is responsible for the demise of the people of London in a rather unique and quite disgusting way. You all know how I feel about mannequins and the Autons. We've had 2 episodes covering those characters. Well, that also extends to realistic AI robots, for example, like Sophia. Yeah, her, that one, that nutter. Really? I can't stand it. The first reveal of the half faced man early on in the episode was quite a shock for me personally. And the fact that he was trying to get spare parts for his own mechanical body and survival, but sort of in reverse to perhaps what the Cybermen do by actually using human body parts, it reminded me of the big Finnish Cyberman episode called Spare Parts. It was released years ago. Go and listen to it. It's a fantastic, fantastic audio drama. And also, the girl in the fireplace with those clockwork robots, which I also find quite creepy as well. In actual fact, there is actually a reference, I believe, to Madame de Pompadour in that very episode, but the Doctor doesn't, make the connection. That moment where Clara and the Doctor turn up at the restaurant and you think everything is normal, only to discover that they're in a room full of robots who can't sense them when they don't breathe. That was very creepy. And that's also the reason why the episode is called Deep Breath, because you're hanging on to your breath for dear life. If you don't hang on, well, you know what's going to happen. Your body parts are going to be used. I'll admit, I'm not as terrified of these droids as I am the Autons. That is for sure. So the Doctor leaves Clara, or at least we think he leaves her, to fend for herself. And it's to the point where she almost suffocates herself in order to try and escape. I mean, that was pretty dramatic. And I can't imagine how children and teenagers would feel watching that. Is the Doctor going to come back for her? It obviously allows for the Doctor to get in disguise with the resolution of the episode set up nice and early, and it's not too fast for once. Now, interestingly, the resolution of this is actually pretty simple. And it's a situation of, with this episode, I think, because there is a lot going on, with the resolution needed to be less, not more, if you know what I mean. And the ship takes off with a hot air balloon made out of skin. Gross. Now, the actual takedown was mostly just talking, a little bit of a scrap between the half-faced man and the Doctor, and of course, a massive, massive sort of fight sequence between Vastra, Strax, Jenny, Clara, and the droids in the basement sort of area of this restaurant. One of the best things, though, about this was what the Doctor was actually saying, as how these robots were not the actual originals, even though they think they are, but because they're just lopping bits off, to their route to perfection, they still believe that they are original, but they are not, because they're cutting it off. Which, if you think about it, is an indirect reference to more plastic and perfectionist world that we actually live in today. And if we pick up on it, then that's absolutely fine. Then we may think to ourselves as well, oh my, that's not actually a good thing. But if we don't pick up on it, it really doesn't matter. The half-faced man throws itself off onto the spire of Big Ben. That's what we are led to believe. And the end ties off pretty much as we see it, us being assured that it's okay with the new Doctor, and the first time we see Missy. Now, did we all know that Missy was the master at this point? Because I really didn't get it. This episode does have some flaws, which I mentioned earlier, but it's a pretty good first start for a Doctor, a pretty solid start. It has a really good pace, it's not rushed, which happens to a lot of New Who stories that we get today. So, a slower first story with food for thought, if you picked up on it, that was great. This was an episode that excelled in showing and not telling us what to think and believe. So that rounds off my review of Deep Breath. What do you think of Deep Breath? Now, next week's episode is going to be a little bit different because Will Hadcroft sent me a brand new copy of his new BBC Doctor Who audiobook, Dark Contract, which is read by Matthew Waterhouse. So it's going to be a review of that. Thank you, Will, for sending that one over. Then I will be back to Classic the following week doing a review there. Make sure you're subscribed to actually catch those reviews, which are released on Sunday at 4 p.m. when there's no main series airing. Make sure that you also vote on the community poll so that you have your say as to what I review on a Sunday for Doctor Who. Chat about it, don't chat about it. Like the video if you would like to. Subscribe if you would like to as well. I will see you next time. Thanks very much for watching. Bye-bye.